Hello there, everybody. My name is Kevin Sylvester, author and illustrator, and also a Star Wars fan. You can see I have my little Darth Vader here. Wait, I even have a little Darth Vader I keep on my desk. Answer the questions. Yes, I will answer the questions, Darth. The questions that my friend Debbie asked me to answer, 3 of them. Question number 1, talk a little bit about my science fiction series, MINRs. Question number 2, some advice for up-and-coming writers. And in some ways, I'll answer number 2 by answering number 1. And third, just a quick look at some of the things that I am working on for the future. I even have like a superhero eye mask when I talk about the future. All right, I'll explain why I have a booger green superhero mask in just a minute. But first, answer number 1 to question number 1. So MINRs. MINRs is a science fiction series for kids. And it is asking questions about who we are on Earth by presenting them in a fictional world, which is a planet called Perseus. Let me explain what I mean by that. What any author really tries to do is take a look at who we are as human beings and how we interact. And in some ways to find out whether or not we would change if the rules of our world were changed. So to set up my series, and this is a question that I want kids to consider. To set up my series, we have a planet that has joined our solar system. That planet is called Perseus. And it has all the things that we need to keep our technology and our amazing lifestyle going back down here on Earth. So they send a group, there's a company called Melving Mining, and they send a group of people to go live on this planet Perseus. But just as they are getting ready to get their first shipment of valuable ore ready to go back to Earth, there's a communications blackout, and during that blackout, the colony is attacked by pirates. And the kids are the only people who survive this attack. And they then, as the series goes on, the 3rd book, it's about to wrap up. The 3rd book is coming out May 2018. The kids have to figure out what is going on inside them. Like, what powers do they have? What resources can they draw on that they did not know they had? And also, they become more and more aware of how complex the world is and some of the outside threats that are facing them as they try to tell everyone on Earth what has happened. Now, the questions that I mentioned that are folded into, the adventure story that I wrote have to do with who we are as human beings. So, for example, if we're going to have this great mission and this ability to go to this planet and, to do epic things, but will that change how we behave? So, on Earth right now, today, we have mining companies that do not treat their workers very well. For example, there are mining companies that don't have great environmental records, that don't have great human rights records. Is that going to change when we do something epic that will require us to work together, like go to space? That's a legitimate question. So in my book, there is a subgroup of people, workers called grinders, who are essentially poor people who are being exploited and being, used to do all the horrible jobs. And they're kids. And so the kids from the mining colony, the survivors of the attack, find these people underground on this planet, and it makes them open up their eyes about the world. That's the fictional world of my book, but I'm hoping that kids will realize that these are some of the questions that they are faced with in our world today. So, obviously I'm hoping that kids find the adventure amazing, but I also want it to have them view our world today through the lens of this fictional world that's in the books. The science, then this is a kind of a thing you would not have expected from me if you had known me as a kid. Because when I was a kid, science was probably my worst subject in school. I couldn't quite conceptualize what they were talking about. But as I've grown up, I have grown in love with things like astrophysics. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. Or Carolyn Porco. Oh, she's amazing. She is the woman who designed the Cassini mission, the satellite that was going around Saturn. Or the Dunlap Institute in the University of Toronto, where I've talked to astrophysicists who fascinate me. They know so much about how our world is created. And what I do is I talk to them about science. And so the stuff that's actually happening in my book has not an imprimatur, because there's a little bit of fantasy involved there as well. But the science that I was able to fold into the series MINRs is fascinating, and I hope spurs kids to go ask some other questions. Like, for example, let me explain what I mean by that. We have a planet and maybe one other planet that are habitable in our solar system. Earth, we know, is habitable, except we're screwing it up. Mars was habitable and might be habitable again. But in that Goldilocks zone, not too hot or not too cold, in our solar system, we could actually fit 5 other planets, full-size planets that could sustain life, that would not really affect the gravitation of everything else, that would not plow into each other. And that was, when I found that out, I thought, wow, that's so amazing. So I added a planet to our solar system called Perseus. So what I'm hoping kids get out of the series is A, fun. It's entertaining. It's a survival story. 2, some questions about ethics and the ethics of our world today and the ethics about, I guess, what that world might be like in the future, because we are going to go to space. And also to see that the children in this story find resources within themselves when the going gets tough, which is a universally important lesson. Now on to question number 2, which was basically, do I have any advice for up-and-coming authors? I have tons, but one of which kind of relates to what I just did in describing my passion for science, is to be curious about stuff that you don't think is that interesting or that you have trouble getting into. So when I was a kid, science was not my thing. But as I've gotten older, I have challenged myself to understand things like the Drake equation. Go look it up. I can't explain it because I don't totally understand it, but it has to do with the possibility of life in the universe. I'm fascinated by nebula and stars and how we are made and what we are made of, and are we the only life on Earth? These are universal questions, but these are the sorts of questions that when you start to ask yourself these questions and you do the research, this is my answer, do the research. When you do the research into these things that you weren't very good at before, for me, science, you learn so much. You learn how amazing the world is. And this is also cool. Your head becomes filled with bits of information you did not think would be relevant to your life. I didn't know science was going to be relevant to me when I was a kid. Figured somebody else would design all the technology. But now that I'm older, I know that little bits of, reality, like the bit about the Goldilocks zone in our solar system, end up becoming things that I can grab and ask questions about and search through to create a fictional world. So be a curious person and read a lot of other books and find out not just why you like them, but how those books work. Break down their structure. Find out how the author went from A to Z or Z and figured out how they were going to get there and how they were going to drag you along. What made you keep turning the page? Was it a cliffhanger ending at the end of each chapter? Was it a teased clue that the characters didn't understand, but the reader, you did, but that's what kept you going? So those would be my 2 bits of advice. Be curious and think critically about what it is that you like in other books. And just a quick answer to number 3. What am I working on now? Well, MINRs obviously is coming out, and I am super thrilled about that. But I've also got a few other things on the go. I have a picture book, which is a very important to me for a number of reasons. One of which is that it was the last book I was working on with my friend Sheila Berry, and she died of cancer last year. But this was a book she and I had developed, and it's all about baby Gargantua, or Gargantua Jr. It's sort of based on, I loved Godzilla movies when I was a kid. And I always wondered, Godzilla Jr. kind of shows up and, I don't know, he just gets to fight. But imagine if he showed up and mom was like, no, super protective. So I have a picture book, which is sort of based on that conceit of Gargantua Jr. And, because I showed you this thing here, wait, I'll take off the MINRs helmet, and I will put back on my my green booger superhero thing. And I even have a cape. Yes, a green cape. Also kind of booger green. And the reason I have this is that I also am part of a series which is coming out in the fall with 3 other authors, Ted Staunton, Leslie Livingston, and Richard Scrimgeour. And this one was so much fun to write because it's all about a girl who, the thing she hates most about herself, or at least in my book, the thing she hates most about herself is her allergies. Her nose is constantly running. And trust me, I know what that's like. I always have to have a box of tissues right next to me. And when she was a baby, she and 3 other kids were zapped with radiation. And when she gets older, that radiation allows her to turn her boogers into warriors that fight battles for her. Yes, Mucus Mayhem is the title of the book. And I'm really happy to work on that one because I thought it was just a lot of fun. There you go. Debbie, always honored to be asked to answer some questions. And that's all I got for you right now. I am off to save the world.